Hey, everybody tuning in now with us. I just want to briefly go through some information as it relates to the text that I chose to dive into, to go through, and to help develop me as a leader when it comes to the executive role. So, my book, as well as my author, I will let you know those two now at this time. My book or my text that I chose to use was The Functions of the Executive, written by Chester Barnard. So, Chester Barnard is a former Harvard student as well as an executive, not only at a subsidiary of AT&T, but as well as a foundation executive, as well as over other organizations. So our author helps give light and some direction and directives to future leaders as well as current leaders that hold the executive seat at this particular time. So just very briefly for a few moments, I want to go through some of the different things that I took away from the text that help shed some light on what it means to be an executive and the functions of the executive role. So some of the functions of the executive role that I would like to lift up first and foremost are the communication, the responsibility, as well as the moral of being the morality. Of being an executive. So three particular points that I would like to lift up that we find in this formal organizing of the function of the executive can be the commune of purpose, the willingness to serve, and the communication therein. We all know that within every corporation, there must be communication. With that, a common purpose must be, as tagged in the text, it states, a common purpose must be commonly known, and to be known must be in the some or the same way communicated with some aspects verbally communication or through verbal communication between men is the method by which this is accomplished, right? So being able to communicate the purpose is a must when it comes to how it is we find ourselves getting to accomplish the goal of the organization structure, right? Executives can transmit the purpose through communication channels. That's very, very, very important when we talk about the communication and the functionality of being an executive. Also, I like to lift up that Barnard also lets us know that an executive works involves specializing and maintaining the organization with its approaches through this communication. Through that communication, we find that the executive functions are like those of the nervous system, which includes the brain and how it relates to the rest of the body. How the brain is the powerhouse, or it is the place where it helps develop the strategy, the mindset, or helps give the directives and sends out that which is necessary and that which is important or relevant to help the organization or the body move forward. Something else I would like to lift up when we talk about being an executive in that function, right? There's three essentials in this text that we can pull out that our author speaks of. Defining the scheme of the organization is important through maintenance of the organization through communication, right? But also maintaining a personnel system. And then securing an informal organization. Being able to understand that we are to craft those within our organization, not only professionally, but personally, right? Going into the depths of their life to help pull out some of those things that make them have that fire for what it is that we're asking them to do. Next up, we find ourselves going into the basics, principles to ensure effectiveness of the communications, right? When we talk about communications, I want to lift up a few of those particular points. There are about 7 in the text that came out, but I want to lift up about 3 of them. One of which is the channels of communication should be known and defined within the system or organization, right? They have to be known. If those channels of communication are not known, then this means that there will be a lack of communication, or there'll be some kind of drop off of communication. So we must know from the executive level down to each of the subordinates that fall under them that there is some kind of channel of communication. Next, I would like to lift up the fact that there have to be how can I put this? There have to be this line of communication that should not be interrupted during the time when the organization is to function, right? There can't be hiccups in this communication flow that cause interruption because during the time the organization needs to be functioning at its best, right? But then finally, the competence of the person serving as the communication center has to be adequate. There must be an adequate supervisor giving out the orders, giving out the daily goals or strategies or whatever it is that we're asking for our constituents or our subordinates to do. There has to be this level, this channel of understanding, but there has to be this communication center that is not only taking what the executive is saying, but also bringing it back to the subordinates and being not only competent in hearing what is being said, but then able to give back and regurgitate that which the executive has spoken about. Next up, we have the decision-making process within being an executive. A few things I want to lift up about that is we find ourselves with the problem of requiring analysts and decision-making surface in various ways. This means that through the problems that we find, we must analyze them, or we must go through them step by step, making sure that we are developing the best plan of action to move forward. The next portion we would find, we can go into Barnard's suggestion of how it is that each occasion creates its own decision, right? The authoritative communication from the supervisor is important. The cases referred to or for the decisions made by the subordinates is very important, because not only does the supervisor have some kind of authority when it comes to how they communicate and trying to get the objectives done through the subordinates, but the subordinates have to make the conscious decision to be able to say, I'm not only willing to receive what was said to me, but I'm also willing to apply what was said to get the job done. Okay, and then moving forward, we talk about the reason behind this decision making. The reason is that the former is the result of the deliberation, calculation, and thought, while the latter is the result of subconscious, automative, and responsive forces. When we start to think about decision making, we have to understand that we are thinking of the result rather than we're just thinking, we were thinking about a host of other factors and how each factor results in something else rather than just thinking about this one particular result by which our actions create, right? Next up, we find the functions of being an executive divided into 4 parts, one of which is the theory of authority. The next is the theory of structure of formal organizations. We also have where we were able to pull out of the text the element of formal organizations, and then the functions of organizations in corporate systems. And then finally, as we are already discussed, as I've spoken to at the beginning, how it is that the communication is important, the morality, but also the responsibility is important when we talk about the executive role, right? This functionality of being an executive, right? We were able to gauge that this is more about acceptance versus theory, right? The acceptance of your subordinates receiving what you've said, but then following through, rather than the theory that once you say it, it shall be done, right? Barnard actually defines the responsibility as the power of a particular private code of morals to control the conduct of individuals in the presence of strong contrary desires or impulses, right? This means that, for instance, if you were to say, "I will never disrespect my employer or my supervisor," but your supervisor asks you to do something that is to you immoral, but you said that you would never want to disrespect or disregard or even deliberately not do what the supervisor has asked you to do, right? Not being compliant, but the supervisor has asked you to do something immoral, right? Or something outside of your core belief, right? So this is where some of the responsibility of an executive comes in, the morality of an executive comes in, and even the conflicts of being an executive comes into play. And as I sum everything up and prepare to close with some of the significance of what it is that I found in Barnard's text. Some of his major contributions is the simple fact that he was the first to actually go into the depths of why it is or how it is that decision making is done within organizations, right? Not only do we see the decision-making piece, but we also see that Barnard is more concerned with the psychological theory of motivation and behavior through a sociological theory of cooperation, right? He talks a little bit about how it is that appreciation matters to those that are inside of the company, as well as he talks to how it is that executives can try to not necessarily manipulate or have manipulated those who are in their organization, but how it is that an executive can help steer their personnel in the right direction by how they treat them, right? Just going to those core beliefs. And then finally, executives are to be concerned with the general part of the purpose, right? If this executive is concerned with the general part of the purpose, they're not only able to redefine the purpose or the objectives or even the direction on every level, but they're also able to formulate and define the purpose, right? On every level as well. So for myself, I would like to also insert this. That there is a natural responsibility for the executive, and that natural responsibility is to shepherd, to protect, to develop, and to enhance those that are a part of the organization. And without this development, without this shepherding, and without this care, as we see Mr. Chester giving to us through our text, being able to be a very hands-on, to be a caring and concerned executive, then you will not necessarily find as much effectiveness from your corporation as a whole. So thank you so much for listening for those brief moments, and I hope you all have a blessed and wonderful day. Please drop your comments, your concerns, and even your criticisms, so that we can all grow together in how it is we see the functionalities of an executive working out. Thank you so much.